Have you ever felt like time itself pauses in the middle of the night, when the world holds its breath and heaven leans in closer? Between 3 calm and 5 Kalansk a.m., there's a sacred window most people sleep through, yet it's the very hour heaven whispers and hell trembles. It's not superstition. It's not just a feeling. It's divine strategy. And if you've ever cried out for change, begged for clarity, or waited for a breakthrough, this might just be your moment. Don't scroll. Stay with me. Because what you'll hear today isn't just encouragement, it's a spiritual key, a secret prayer that has shifted destinies, protected families, and awakened weary hearts. One prayer, 1 hour, one bold move of faith. That's all it takes. There is a moment, yes, a holy pause, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. when something unseen begins to stir. It's as if the entire earth exhales. The noise dies down, the distractions vanish, and the atmosphere becomes heavy, not with chaos, but with divine expectation. While the rest of the world sleeps, something sacred is happening. Can you feel it? It's during this silent hour that the gates of heaven swing open, not for the flawless, not for the ones who have it all figured out, but for the desperate, for the broken, for the spiritually hungry, for the ones whose hearts are still whispering, "God, don't pass me by." Maybe that's you. Maybe you've been carrying silent battles. Maybe your smile hides a storm. You've been crying out for change, not just outwardly, but inwardly. You've been waiting for something to shift in your marriage, in your children, in your soul. You're not asking for perfection. Just a sign, just a move, just a moment with God that says, "I see you." And what if I told you that moment has always been within reach? What if the breakthrough wasn't behind a locked door, but behind a door waiting for you to knock? That's why this video, this exact moment, matters. Because by the end, I'm going to give you a prayer. Not just any prayer, but a fiery one. One that shakes the enemy's camp. One that brings heaven to attention. One that has transformed the lives of thousands of women. Simple, specific, supernatural. You see, between 3 and 5 a.m., the spiritual realm is not asleep. Far from it. While the streets are quiet and your phone finally stops buzzing, the unseen war continues. Demons don't rest. Nightmares cling. Depression sharpens its claws. Guilt whispers louder. Doubt tiptoes in. But listen, so does God. He doesn't wait for your perfection. He waits for your presence. He's not looking for flawless prayers or eloquent words. He's searching for one daughter, just one, who will roll out of bed, rub the sleep from her eyes and whisper, "Here I am, Lord. Speak to me." This isn't a superstition. This is spiritual warfare. This is alignment. This is power. When you move in the early morning, heaven moves with you. When you take a step toward Him in secret, He rewards you in public. And when a woman, tired, burdened, confused, gets up before the sun and says, "God, I need you," things begin to change. Let me tell you what happens when a woman prays during this holy hour. She may rise weak, but she rises willing, and willingness is all God needs. Chains start to break. Addictions lose their grip. Fear begins to melt away. When a mother stands in the gap for her children before dawn, angels are dispatched. Darkness lifts. Protection surrounds her household like a divine fortress. She may not see it yet, but heaven has taken notice. When a single woman kneels before God, asking for direction in the silence of those early hours, clarity doesn't just trickle in, it roars like thunder. God doesn't leave her in confusion. He begins to whisper purpose, vision, peace. You're not weak, you're not forgotten. You are not invisible to God. But sometimes, just sometimes, heaven isn't waiting for a louder cry. It's waiting for an earlier one. It's not about volume, it's about timing. There is power in early pursuit. That's why before this message ends, I will share with you the secret prayer. And when you pray it, get ready. Your home won't be the same. Your thoughts won't be the same. Your sleep, your mornings, your relationships, they will all begin to shift. Not because of the prayer itself, but because of the heart behind it. Because you dared to believe that even in your weariness, God was still listening. Because you dared to move while the world stayed still. So don't leave yet. Stay with me. Let your spirit stay open, even if your eyes are tired, because what I'm about to give you can unlock the supernatural in your life. There's a mystery, one often missed, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. It's not just the quiet, it's the stirring. The veil between heaven and earth seems thinner. The spiritual realm is closer than you think. Your prayers don't have to travel far. His presence is already near. This is more than a time slot. It's an invitation. Will you accept it? You remember that sacred window we spoke of, the one between 3 and 5 a.m., when heaven draws near and darkness trembles? Well, let's go deeper, because what happens during those quiet hours isn't superstition. It's sacred alignment, and it changes everything. While the world sleeps, angels begin to walk. Heaven watches. And yes, hell whispers. But make no mistake, this isn't about myths or folklore. It's about positioning your spirit where heaven can find you. It's about realignment, when the noise fades and the distractions fall away. In that hush, God moves differently. You see, when the chaos of life is muted, when the buzz of the world finally dies down, it's in that rare silence that the voice of God becomes clearest. He's not in the crowd, shouting above the noise. He's not elbowing through distractions to get your attention. No, he waits in the stillness, and those early morning hours are among the stillest moments earth has to offer. That's why the women who dare to rise during this divine window carry something different. They don't just carry prayer, they carry oil, a heavenly fragrance, a weight in the spirit that casual seekers never touch. They are not spiritual hobbyists. They are intercessors, women who have learned that God is not bound by the ticking of a clock, but he honors the ones who seek him when it costs them something, when it's not easy, when the room is cold, when the pillow is still warm, when every part of your body says, just one more hour, but your spirit cries, now, rise, seek him. That's when breakthrough starts to loosen its chains. It's not a coincidence that Jesus often withdrew to pray in the early hours before the world stirred. That wasn't random. It was strategic. It's no accident that some of the greatest revivals in history were born from prayer meetings that began before the sun rose. There is power in the still voice of God. But there's also power in the woman who whispers, I will rise while others sleep. I will pray while others scroll. I will seek him while he may be found. That's the kind of prayer that moves heaven. Between 3 and 5 a.m., the heavens don't just open, they listen. The silence of those hours is more than a quiet room. It's a cleared space for your soul to breathe again. And in that breath, in that sacred hush, God begins to search, not for the loudest, not for the strongest, not for the one who has it all together, but for the willing, for the one who will simply say, here I am, Lord, use me. Women have always had a deep, intimate connection with the heart of God, not because they are perfect, but because they're open. surrendered, available. And when a woman rises early, before the chaos, before the messages, before the pressure of the day begins, something shifts in the spirit. The atmosphere bends. Heaven leans in, because God moves most in the lives of those who come to Him fully, surrendered. And there's no better time to surrender than before the day even starts. No distractions, no notifications, no running lists or background noise, just stillness and Him. And in that quiet place, He's already there, waiting for a daughter to rise, waiting for a voice that says, I didn't come because it was easy. I came because I need you. Why does God move most during that hour? Because it's the hour that requires the most faith. It's inconvenient. It's uncomfortable. But that's what makes it powerful. That's what makes your prayer more than just words. It becomes warfare. Those aren't just sleepy whispers. They are declarations in the Spirit. They are heavenly transactions. They are tears that become seeds, planted deep in the soil of heaven's promise. And when you rise and pray in that hour, you begin to hear what was drowned out in the noise of yesterday, God's voice. He gives direction you didn't ask for, peace you didn't expect, healing you didn't even know you needed. Women who rise early to pray don't do it to look spiritual. They do it because their spirit knows what's at stake. They've tasted what happens when heaven responds to hunger. It's not about building a perfect morning routine. It's about stepping into divine revelation. And you want to know why the enemy works so hard to keep you asleep during those hours? Because he knows the truth. He knows what happens when a woman wakes up. He knows the weight of your voice when you use it to intercede. He knows your prayer can shift generations. And here's the truth. The enemy doesn't want you to realize. When a woman carries prayer in the early morning hours, she carries fire. And the kind of fire that burns between 3 and 5 a.m. Hell can't handle that, because when she opens her mouth during those sacred hours, heaven doesn't hesitate. Heaven answers. Now, here's what you've been waiting for. The secret prayer. It isn't long, it isn't rehearsed, and it certainly isn't perfect. No, this prayer doesn't come from your lips. It comes from deep within your soul. It's raw, unfiltered, honest. It's not something you read from a devotional book or recite like poetry. It's not polished, with the right cadence or spoken with the perfect tone. This prayer is a cry, a whisper, a release. It rises from the place in you that's tired of pretending, from the place that says, God, I have nothing left but you. It isn't powerful because of fancy words. It's powerful because it's real. And in those hours, when darkness still clings to the sky, when the world is wrapped in silence and no one is watching, God listens closely. He's not waiting for a sermon. He's listening for something else. He's listening for truth, spoken from the heart. That's the secret. This prayer isn't about asking God to give you more things. It's about offering Him everything. It's the kind of surrender that shifts atmospheres. It's the kind of moment where you fall to your knees and say, God, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what's next, but I give you my life. I give you my children. I give you my mind, my heart, my future. All of it is yours. And when you say that, from your gut, not just your mouth, something begins to break. Chains rattle. Strongholds shake. Why? Because God doesn't respond to noise. He responds to faith. This kind of prayer isn't a performance. It's not for show. It's lived. It's the kind of prayer you pray while the tears won't stop flowing. When your hands are lifted in the dark, with no worship music, no audience, no lights, just you and God. And in that place, between 3 and 5 a.m., when that prayer leaves your lips, it carries weight in the heavens. That prayer, it silences demonic voices. It crushes fear. It commands peace to enter your home, your mind, your life. Some women go their whole lives without discovering this kind of prayer. They never rise, they never cry out, they never tap into this deep well of intimacy. But the ones who do, the ones who dare to wake up, to kneel down, to whisper His name in the stillness, those women become dangerous in the spirit. They carry authority. They walk boldly, not because life is easy, but because heaven has marked them. Heaven always responds to the woman who prays before the storm. While others are still dreaming, she is interceding. While others are snoozing alarms, she's shaking heaven. These aren't ordinary women. They've been transformed by the power of the Holy Spirit, and you can feel it in their presence. They may not say much, but their presence speaks volumes. You ever meet someone and just sense strength, peace, depth? That's what happens to a woman who has met God at 3 a.m. Something supernatural begins to take root when you rise early to seek the Lord in those hidden hours. These women begin to carry a holy oil, not from effort or striving, but from intimacy, not performance, but presence. Their lives become saturated with a quiet confidence. They're no longer tossed by every storm. They're no longer shaken by every emotion. Why? Because they've touched something eternal. They've sat with the living God when the world was silent. They've heard His whisper before the sun rose. And now, they don't live in fear. They're no longer bound by anxiety or confusion. They've been restored. They've been healed. They've been transformed. Their homes feel different. Their children notice it. Their marriages, yes, even the ones hanging on by a thread, begin to find new strength. Because when a woman meets God in the stillness, everything changes. And when she prays like that, day after day, quietly, persistently, something begins to shift, not just in her, but in the people around her. Her children, the ones who were drifting, who seemed lost in rebellion or drowning in confusion, suddenly begin to return. Not because she argued them back, not because she forced change, but because something in the spiritual realm has moved. Something has realigned with heaven's plan. Even the health battles she's been carrying, whether physical pain, emotional wounds, or the silent weight of mental struggle, meet divine resistance. Why? Because she has learned to lay it all before the Lord when the rest of the world is still asleep. When heaven is listening most intently, this doesn't mean she never suffers. She's not immune to hardship. She faces the same storms, the same disappointments, the same heartbreaks as anyone else. But what sets her apart is that she no longer fights those battles alone. She's discovered a deeper well. She's tapped into the secret place, that sacred realm where God meets those who rise before the sun. She knows where the real victory is won. Not in public, not in noise, but in the quiet, in the hidden, when the world sleeps and her knees hit the floor. You see, the power of early morning prayer doesn't just change your circumstances. It transforms you. It purifies your motives. It reshapes your character. It stretches your faith and deepens your endurance. Over time, you begin to walk with a kind of spiritual clarity most people only dream of. You begin to move with an anointing that doesn't come from striving, but from surrender. The testimonies of women who have walked this path are countless. They've seen marriages restored, prodigal children come home, finances shift, fear replaced by peace. They're not special because of who they are. They're powerful because of what they've learned to do in the secret hours. They've learned to rise early, to seek Him, to listen, to war in prayer. And the enemy? He knows this. The devil hates a woman who prays between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. He dreads it. And so he does everything he can to keep her from rising. He sends weariness. He sends whispers like, just stay in bed. You need sleep more than you need prayer. It's too early. You can pray later. But here's what most don't realize. This is the battlefield. This moment, when she hears those lies and chooses to rise anyway, this is where the battle is won. Because the enemy thrives in chaos. He thrives in noise, distraction, confusion. But when a woman wakes before dawn and steps into the stillness, she wrecks his plans. Her whisper becomes a roar in the spirit. She becomes a threat, not just to her own bondage, but to everything the devil has tried to destroy in her home, her marriage, her legacy. Jesus said the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But the Word of God also promises something more powerful. The gates of hell will not prevail against the church. And make no mistake, a praying woman is part of that church. She's on the front lines. She's not wearing armor you can see, but every word she prays is a strike against darkness. When she prays before sunrise, she doesn't just speak into her living room. She speaks into eternity. The atmosphere shifts. She becomes a woman who can close doors the enemy once opened. She learns how to bind demons that were sent to torment her family. She invites the peace of God into places that were once filled with anxiety, division, and fear. Early morning prayer becomes like a spiritual shield. It covers her family. It guards her marriage. It protects her children, her finances, and her future. It's not just a routine. It's armor. And the devil knows. He's powerless against a woman who has laid her entire life before God, before the day even begins. So what does he do? He tries to keep her in bed. He tells her it's not worth it, that she's too tired, that she can always start tomorrow. But every time she pushes past that voice, every time she says, "No, I will rise," she becomes more dangerous than she was the day before. She becomes unstoppable. Heaven responds to her obedience. And hell trembles, because the enemy knows what happens when a woman prays between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. He knows she's not just saying words, she's summoning the presence of God in a way that shifts the atmosphere. And once God shows up, nothing can stay the same. That's why the enemy fights her so fiercely. That's why he tries to keep her asleep, because once she rises, truly rises, she becomes a force he cannot stand against. So what happens when a woman makes it a habit, not just a one-time effort, to meet with God before the sun? The transformation is nothing short of miraculous. First, clarity begins to pierce through the confusion. Where once her mind was clouded with worry, uncertainty, and overwhelm, suddenly things begin to make sense. The fog lifts. Decisions that once felt impossible now feel guided. She starts to recognize the voice of God leading her step by step, and this isn't some vague, fleeting feeling. It's divine direction. It's the kind of wisdom that only comes when you've been still long enough to hear heaven speak. When a woman chooses to rise early to pray, she's not just hoping for answers, she receives them, not always instantly, but consistently. Because God sees her sacrifice, and he honors it. She may have prayed for months, even years, without seeing change. But now, suddenly, things begin to shift. It's like God accelerates what once seemed delayed. Why? Because he sees her consistency, her commitment. When she gives him those quiet hours, those raw, undistracted moments, he gives her something in return, alignment with his will. And when your heart is aligned with God's heart, the impossible starts to feel possible. But this isn't just about personal breakthroughs. The ripple effect of her early morning prayer begins to touch everything around her. Her home becomes a sanctuary. Her relationships grow deeper, more honest, more whole. If there were walls of division in her marriage or family, those walls begin to crumble. Because there is power in a woman's prayer, especially when it's prayed while the world sleeps. Her voice, though quiet, shakes the gates of heaven. It carries authority, and it brings blessings down on her family like gentle rain falling in dry places. The children she intercedes for in those early hours, they begin to shift, not because of lectures or control, but because a praying mother's words have power in the Spirit. She covers them like a shield. She clothes them in peace. She speaks life over their future when they can't see it themselves. And in the process, something even more beautiful begins to take place. She is changed. Fear that once ruled her mind begins to dissolve. Anxiety that used to grip her chest slowly releases. Doubt that whispered lies for years is silenced. She becomes a woman of inner strength, not from her own might, but from the strength that only comes through communion with God. And here's the key. This isn't a one-time encounter. This is a lifestyle. When she makes early morning prayer a habit, not just a crisis response, she steps into a new realm of power. Her life begins to bear fruit, not just momentary change, but lasting transformation. People begin to notice. She may not say much about it, but her presence speaks volumes. She walks with a quiet confidence, with grace that can't be explained, with favor that can't be earned, only received, because favor, anointing, and divine peace aren't rewards for perfection. They're gifts, freely given to those who seek God in the secret place. So as we come to the end of this message, let me leave you with this truth. There is a power that awakens in the stillness of the night. In those sacred hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., heaven waits, not for performance, not for perfection, but for presence. That time is not just a quiet part of the day. It is a divine appointment, an opportunity for heaven to meet earth, and for the woman who dares to rise, who silences the excuses, who opens her mouth in prayer while the world sleeps. Something supernatural begins to happen. Her life becomes marked by the presence and favor of God. She is no longer ordinary. She becomes a woman commissioned by heaven, and no force in hell can stop her. Her prayers are no longer just words. They've become weapons, powerful, precise, and unshakable. Weapons forged in the secret place, sharpened by tears, and aimed with unwavering faith. They tear down strongholds, break generational curses, bring healing to broken places, and release blessings into the lives of those she loves. And the enemy? He cannot stand against her. Not because she's loud, not because she's perfect, but because she's anchored in the presence of God. He trembles at the sound of her voice, not because of her tone, but because of the authority behind it. He knows that when she opens her mouth to pray at 3 a.m., she is calling upon heaven's armies. She is invoking the name above every name, and nothing in hell can compete with that kind of power. Because that power, the power of the Almighty, it doesn't just visit her, it dwells in her. It wraps itself around her words and releases miracles into the atmosphere. Strongholds crumble. Wounds begin to close. Doors that once stood shut for years swing wide open. And no man, no force, no circumstance can close what God decides to open. And it's in those quiet, sacred moments, before the world stirs, before the noise of the day begins, that God reveals himself to her in ways that no sermon, no song, no event ever could. Ladies, listen closely. You don't have to be perfect to meet him there. You don't have to have all the right words. You don't need a title, a pulpit, or a perfect track record. What moves heaven is not your performance. It's your heart. It's that whisper in the dark that says, "Here I am, Lord." That one act of surrender moves mountains in the spiritual realm. And when you choose to rise early, even when you're tired, even when you feel unqualified, even when nothing around you has changed, that choice, that yes, has the power to shift everything: your life, your marriage, your children, your purpose, your future. They all begin to fall into divine alignment, not because you're striving, but because you're yielding. So I encourage you. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Start tomorrow, not with some grand, eloquent prayer, not with pressure or guilt, but with a simple, honest surrender. Just say, God, I'm here. I don't have it all together, but I trust you. Speak to me, and watch. Watch as He begins to move in ways you never imagined. Watch as peace floods your home. Watch as healing begins in your soul. Watch as divine opportunities open where you thought all was lost, because the prayers you whisper at dawn, they don't just disappear, they echo into eternity. They shake heaven. They shift your legacy. You may feel unseen in those early hours, but heaven sees you. Heaven hears you, and heaven moves because of you. So rise, sister. Now is your time. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for a better season. Now is holy. Rise up and pray. The heavens are listening, and the God who never sleeps is waiting just for you.